Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Anthony Citrolo, and this is my podcast known as the Firm Grasp on an Empty Bag. And we are interviewing and speaking with a good friend of mine, Sharon Mahin, today. But before that, I'd like to just mention, of course, we are in very interesting times in both the economy, both the world, especially in the world of mergers and acquisitions and exit planning. And with many business owners looking to sell or exit their companies, we have rising interest rates. We have strong demand from private equity firms. Of course, they're contending with rising interest rates, which could have some impact on deal flow. But what we're trying to do here is provide business owners with some really resources and some information to help them as they're on that path to going toward exit or succession, especially for those who are family-owned businesses. And my podcast, known as Firm Grasp, is dedicated to those business owners. As I said, family-owned businesses. The goal is to maximize and help them realize the value of what is typically their largest asset, and it's your largest asset. The business that either started by maybe a prior generation, maybe by mothers or fathers or uncles or aunts, and now it's kept in the family, and perhaps now it's time to move on. Many families, we understand, retirement rests on the sale of the company. Many people have most of their dollars trapped in the business, and it's my job to help them turn that asset into cash so that they can realize the benefits of their years of hard work and dedication. So the podcast Firm Grasp on an Empty Bag is helping owners realize what makes one business a little more valuable than perhaps another business and help them exit. And today I am very excited about having my good friend Sharon Mahin with me. And Sharon comes from a background of a family-owned business. I'll let her talk to you about that for a second. She really worked hard and always been entrepreneurial. She is the founder of Savoca Enterprises, has I'd say over 20 years or more of industry experience in helping companies on the minority side, but also helping majority-owned companies as well. She advises business owners on not just diversity, but on a lot of different aspects of their business, which she has understood to be very important over the years of her owning a business herself. We are going to talk today about how to properly qualify as perhaps a minority-owned company and be certified, and perhaps how to use that and build your business a little bit. Sharon has specific areas of her business that include technology, healthcare, security, construction, and she works with us as an affiliate and a trusted advisor on the merger and acquisition side. And as I said, Sharon is a good friend. We partner jointly. We've done that for many years. And Sharon, I want to welcome you to the show, and we're glad you're here. And one thing I always knew is we know each other for a lot of years, and we've always had the same mindset, the same focus. We understood about family-owned business. We understood people. We understood that we needed to assist those business owners when it relates to growing their business, providing the resources they need. Sharon has a very successful daughter, is married to Brian for many years. I don't know how many years, Sharon, but
33 on Friday.
33 on Friday. Congratulations. So Sharon, why don't you give us, and welcome, and I'm really thrilled to have you. Just give us a little bit about your background, okay? And a little, especially, I know you have a good business background with dad and all that kind of, that works out. So I'll give it to you for a couple of minutes. Then we'll ask you a couple of questions, and we'll kind of converse a little bit about, what's going on in today's world.
Great. Well, thank you, Anthony, and for inviting me to join your podcast. This is very exciting, and of course, all the years of our friendship are very valuable to me. I've learned a lot from you, and I think we are a pretty dynamic duo when it comes to helping our clients really recognize the value of the work that they've put into their businesses, and that's our job. Coming from an entrepreneurial family, my father was in the nightclub business and in the construction business. I did work for a short time in corporate America for General Motors and ABN AMRO, but really found it in my heart, in my DNA, that working in my own business was what I really wanted to do and where I really fit the best. So I think with coming from that background, I have a lot of understanding and sensitivity to the challenges it is to get up every day and make some magic. and have your own business. And as rewarding as it is, it's sometimes very challenging, very lonely. We need to have partners and champions that will help us not only navigate, but hopefully not hit all the bumps in the road and learn from others' mistakes. I was fortunate enough briefly about my diversity background, my husband's business, which was in downtown New York, a printing company, was totally lost during 9/11. And at that time, he didn't really know what he was going to do with his company. And I took upon myself the chore to go downtown and find out what was available. And the city of New York was said to us, we will be happy to give you an attorney. And that attorney said to me, did you ever think about becoming a woman-owned business? And I didn't know what that meant. But all I did know is if I had to be anything, if it was a certified giraffe to build my company back, I was going to do it. The rest is history. I won my first contract 11 months later from the Borough Manhattan Community College, kept that contract with us for many years, brought the business not only to a woman-owned business, but back to New York. So my heartstrings are tied to that story and the stories that I think that I've helped make over the years of learning about the value of diversity. It's got front page position right now with the social climate we're in. However, there is a tremendous amount of value that we can bring to the table as business owners, as diverse business owners, specifically women, minority, veteran, and LGBTQ businesses. So my expertise is how do we take this value, and especially in this market, and bring it to the table to enhance the opportunities that we can create with companies that are majority-owned companies, and how do we leverage that to maximize our exit? So that's.
I know you said, we were talking about, it's interesting. I run across a lot of what appear to be minority-owned companies and businesses that are operated, they believe as such, but they are not necessarily certified. What is actually a certified diverse company, and what is the difference between that company or someone who appears to have a minority ownership, perhaps doesn't have that certification?
Well, let me start with this conversation. For many years, the wives, girlfriends, and daughters of companies were put in the president role, thinking that would suffice to be deemed a woman-owned business or a diverse business, and that isn't the case. Diversity is not something that you just elect to be. You must prove it. And how do you prove it? First of all, 51% or more of the stock interest of the company has to be held and managed by that diverse partner, whether it be a woman, minority, veteran, or LGBT.
So that person has to be an active owner, Sharon?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have to have the fiduciary responsibility. So that means that any of the banking relationships, any of the financial instruments, their signature is the signature that is required. Lease agreements, anything that has to do with the business operation, the buck stops there. Yeah. So the days of, the husband having the wife come into the biz office. I remember years ago, I went to visit a company that wanted me to work with them. And I walked in and the husband had this giant office and I was waiting for the woman-owned, the wife, who's the owner and runs the company. She didn't even have an office. I don't even think she knew where the office was, to be honest with you. So the point is this. There are 4 recognized organizations that issue certification. For women, it's the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, which is referred to as WBENC. For diversity companies, minority companies, being Hispanic, African American, that organization is called the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council. For veterans, it's NYBB, which is the National Association of Veteran Business Owners. And for the LGBTQ community, it's the NGLCC, which is the National Council for Gay and Lesbian Businesses. So those are the 4 recognized organizations that will do the certification process and issue the certification. And that is on the public side. On the private side, rather. On the public side, depending upon the location of your business. For example, in New York, you have a couple of different entities that'll certify you. New York City has a certification, the Small Business Services of New York City, they can certify you. New York State, the Empire State Development Council, they can certify you. Then you have the MTA, they have a certification. Okay, so we have, and we also have the school construction. So those are a few different agencies, if you'd like, that are certifying to validate that, in fact, yes, the company is run by a diverse company. And then there's one last one, which is a very, very sought after one, especially if you're doing federal work, and that is the SBA certification.
Right. Okay. And NYBB happens to be an NMSDC certified minority-owned business, and we went through that process, which was a pretty elaborate process, and the one where it wasn't just a rubber stamp for certainly, absolutely. And I think there are, I think we've spoken often, Sharon, about some of the benefits on how businesses can leverage this diversity to grow their business. And we come across at NYBB a lot of many. I'm amazed at how many minority-owned and diverse businesses we have. We have one that now is in the cleaning space, and they are veterans, and they access contracts that are specific to their certification. We have another one that is also basically in the construction world. They do a lot of painting and a lot of construction work, and they work for a lot of major universities in New York City, and they actually access a portal that benefits them. But if we're looking at business, how can the business actually leverage that diversity to grow or sell their business?
So there's two components here that are really important to understand. First of all, in the environment, in the business environment we are in right now, whether it is public or private sector, companies or agencies have been, I don't want to say forced, but it has been more than suggested that contract criteria will include up to 30% set aside in that contract to have diversity participation. So what does that mean? So I'm a majority-owned cleaning company. Okay, I want to do a job for whether it be Walmart or the city of New York. In that contract, I can't even, in that RFP, forget the contract, in that RFP, I will not be able to participate unless I can identify what we call a second tier diverse partner. And it has to be very clear that that second tier person is certified, and also what their scope of work and realm of responsibility will be in the project. Years ago, for many years, you could kind of get a pass, say, oh, I couldn't find a qualified, diverse company to fulfill the contract. That's no longer the case. Many of the states have gone over and above, and organizations, like I earlier mentioned, have been getting companies certified. So the excuse that there isn't any is not even entertained anymore.
So when you say majority owned, those are the larger companies who basically win contracts, right? They're not minority owned, and then the set aside is basically telling them that a percentage of the contract that they win needs to be executed by a minority-owned company, right? Even though it's under the auspices of their major contract, they still have the requirement to source that as perhaps their subcontractor, right?
Exactly. And let me just be clear, because a company is a diverse company, it does not indicate that they're small. I mean, I was at the National Women's Conference last week, and I had the pleasure of seeing a dear friend of mine, Nina Vodka, who owns a company called the Pinnacle Group. And her business is, I believe, $2 billion at this point. And she's first generation here in the United States. She's a woman and she's a minority. So the thing is this. The city, the state, private business recognizes if they do not make their supply chain look like their customers, okay, they are not going to be successful in their business. And this is something that has been finally, like say that everyone, all those corporations and those organizations have had that aha moment. In terms of, the government side, the public side, you cannot turn the television on today without hearing something about diversity participation. So it took a long time to educate what we call the prime vendors. Those are the companies that are majority run, meaning that there's no ethnicity, diversity in their ownership. Okay. And, they always kind of begrudged us being the diverse suppliers of, I have to give away part of my contract. And my job, and part of the services my company fulfilled, was the education of educating these major companies to say, look, you do work with NYBB Group or Savoca. You now can not only just take us to this particular opportunity, but you now have a partner to fulfill your diversity requirement on future contracts. So it's about building capacity with inclusion and diversity.
Sure. It's interesting. My first introduction years ago was I had attended an event at Columbia University. It was put on by the city of New York, and it was mostly contractors there. And you remember that event, right?
Yeah, we were there. Yes.
What I found remarkable about it back then is the majority-owned companies, as you put them, was struggling actually to find minority-owned companies that could handle the work that they needed to dole out. Okay, and what do you see as? I mean, that has changed a lot, because I think a lot of those minority-owned companies have really come alive, and really have grown. But what do you see as still some of the challenges that the minority-owned company faces in order to be able to accept that work, execute the work? I mean, collect on the work. There's so many different issues. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges?
Well, I think that's one of the not trend-setting changes that have been, but really one of the actual changes that have been is the approach. Minority or diverse companies are not looking to try to win the big contract, but to be part of the big contract. And what they're doing now, and I will commend many of the companies, the private sector and the public sector, many of these projects are looking to champion the diversity companies, the diverse companies. And believe me, it's a different conversation when the Department of Transportation calls up one of their prime vendors and says, hey, I've got Sharon here from Savoca, and she could provide X, Y, and Z in that contract you're interested. I think you should speak to her. Yeah. It becomes a whole different conversation. From my own personal experience back years ago when I was working with my husband in the printing industry, we were a couple of million, maybe $6-7 million company, couldn't get the big contracts. However, when I was able to partner with $100 million majority-owned company, now they were taking me to companies like Caesars and to some of the big airlines and the cruise lines, because they had a diverse partner. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. There is an education that has to be done, because again, like I mentioned earlier, the majority-owned companies look like, hey, Sharon and Anthony are taking money out of our pocket, instead of, hey, Sharon and Anthony are going to be able to open doors and get us more opportunities and more contracts.
And I think the mistake that folks make is, and I've met hundreds of these people who are minority-owned companies who are more than formidable. I mean, they are really top-notch business folks. They the only thing they happen to have is that certification, but if you looked on the surface, they are as successful and as well run as any other company, and they just happen to have a minority certification. So for people who think perhaps that these are mom and pops and somebody working out of their garage or somebody working out of their trunk, I find that to be completely untrue. And I think, look, there are people who are not diverse companies who are working out of their trunk and working out of their garage and everything, right? So, you can't pigeonhole and say that is the only the folks that we're looking at. These are very, especially, I mean, I've run into so many successful women-owned businesses that, and these weren't ones that were handed down from daddy or from mommy. These were ones that were ground up business, and they are smart folks who really know how to execute their business. Now, I wanted to switch a little bit, because I know we have talked about, you're part of, I mean, look, your certifications. I mean, I know you have New York City and New York State and MTA and WeBank and SBA and federal certifications. But I know you have access to what they call the $1 billion round table, right? It's the billion round table, $1 billion.
Yeah, it's the billion dollar round table.
Talk about that so people in the audience can understand the immensity of what we're talking about here. This is not just a little participating group. This is really got all the big players in kind of the world.
Exactly. So the $1 billion roundtable was put together probably about, I'd say a better part of 15 years ago. And what it was corporations that actually spent $1 billion or more with diverse companies. And the most recently, I think the most recent company that was added to that group was CVS. And I'll put it this way: once you sit down at that table, you don't want to be asked to leave. So it's a great opportunity. I think we have somewhere around 27 national brands that sit at that table, and they are the leaders, because they're doing it right. They're getting their diversity spend and they're increasing it and they're recording it. And I guess they are the poster children for many of the other corporations that, it is possible. It is possible.
And these are companies in every industry, right? I mean, you have airlines in the industry, you have accounting firms.
Right. In every industry across the board, there is participation or a representation, rather, of those industries at the $1 billion roundtable. So I guess to kind of sum up what that means, diversity spend is not a couple of pennies. It's not a couple of dollars. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that convert to billions of dollars. So to say today, one of my assets of being a business is my certification. And that brings us to the question I think that we really kind of want to address is valuation of a company, valuation of your business, what that added value of having your certification can bring to the table when you're thinking of either being acquired or growing your capacity by maybe a partnership or, a merger. Always keeping in mind, though, when there is a merger scenario that's created, that certification has to be held intact. And that's one of the things that, I've become a bit of a subject matter expert working with Anthony as he's structuring the deal. We make sure that the integrity of the certification, because it's an asset. It's an asset. It's a part of a viable asset that's going to continue the growth of the business. So we want to make sure that it's never jeopardized. But that, to me, is maybe what we are coming to market and bringing in a unique approach. My conversations with Anthony and I have had since the pandemic is that, it's been a tough road. A lot of people are saying, I'm done. I've had enough. I'm going to sell my business. And then there are those people that say, you know what, I've got to make up for the lost time. How am I going to do it? I'm going to look to buy businesses. So what we are saying is both of those scenarios work with combining them with the value that diversity can bring, whether you're selling your business or buying a business. That particular asset of diversity can be a real game changer in the future growth or this exit of a business.
I believe that, and I tell folks all the time, I'd like to address, the importance of really having an expert structure engagement so we can protect the certification. And we also, just so you know, we have a lot of investor types and folks who would invest and I don't want to get confused with the word minority interest, right? But they would take what's called a minority interest in a business. So which means that they would invest less than 50% in a business so that somebody who is actually minority certified can have this investment and have this capability and have this cash and still retain their minority certification. But I wanted you to address the importance of having somebody like yourself as an expert structure those engagements so that we do protect that certification, and because there's a lot of value that I think future growth is tied into it as well.
Absolutely. And that is really a slippery slope because if you do not maintain, as I mentioned earlier, 51% of the company, but also are the deciding factor on how the operation is run, you're not going to get your certification. And, these people that, these organizations that do certifications, the people that are on the certification committees, they weren't born yesterday. They can see when it's all smoke and mirrors and that there's really no clout being delivered from the woman or the minority or whoever the entity is that's carrying the certification. So in my experience, what I make sure I do is structure first of all, the whether it be a strategic partnership agreement or an actual acquisition where the majority owned company or the non-diverse company can acquire up to 49%. We have to be very, very careful and very clear on where the responsibilities, again, are going to fall. And again, the day-to-day management of the company could be, spread out among whoever, the staff, but the ultimate decision must be made by the diverse party.
Because it's a little tricky. A lot of times the investors come in and they have a board of directors and they want to make, decisions on behalf of the company. Now, if they are investing and they don't have a majority interest in that company, obviously they should have fewer board seats. But sometimes you got to be careful because the investor sometimes rules. They have a little bit more to say than perhaps they are allowed to, especially in this case. This is not just a normal case where someone's investing in any business, perhaps, per se.
And that's why it's very important when I work with clients that maybe have different divisions and maybe different markets, and maybe there's an umbrella of businesses. It's important to kind of get the landscape before I can recommend how to structure the agreement. But again, most important, you could have a woman-owned company that does project management. I own 100% of my project management firm. Okay. However, I work with a construction company that is my second tier. Okay. So they could own the whole company in its entity, but the lead on the contract would be me as the woman owned. There's a lot of nuances, and I can't really even, because there's
right.
It's almost 25 years I'm in this particular business vertical, and it's changing. It's changed dramatically in the last 5 years to the good, to create more opportunity.
Sure. And I think the message is really, even like when folks hire attorneys, they hire experts. When folks hire CPAs, they hire experts. When folks are looking to get diverse certification, because it's such a big deal, hire an expert. I wanted to get to one other thing before we end, but we are looking, we work together on a program where we're providing for some collaboration and some access to the network that you've developed. And I want you to talk a little bit about that and about, who can actually benefit the most from that.
Well, it's interesting because we've got a couple of different audiences for the services that we've kind of come together to provide. For example, on the corporate level, okay, a concern is always the strength of the supply chain. I'm sure everybody's probably tired of hearing the word supply chain, but supply chain is critical, and the integrity of a supply chain, as we all know, impacts directly to the profitability and the stability of a company. So what NYBB Group and Savoca has gone to market to some of these corporations is said, let us help you strengthen your supply chain by evaluating the companies that are the suppliers, whether they be diverse or majority owned, and help create those connections where we could build the capacity and again insulate your exposure for supply chain disruption. That's the corporate side. On the prime side, which we call the prime vendors or the majority owned vendors, this comes right to about where they are in their company. Listen, everyone has felt that they've been on pause for the last 2 years with COVID. This is a means to an end to kind of catch up, for lack of a better term, but also to be able to open more opportunities with diverse partners. And again, that has to do with evaluation, both with the majority owned company or the prime and the second tier, because what we want to do is create a relationship, not a one and done. Building a reputation in an industry as a partnership that's put together correctly with the diversity, with a diverse partner, is with a prime, is a winning combination. And with our programs that NYBB Group and Savoca have put together, whether it starts with the certification, evaluation of the company, where they are financially, what they need to do for financing, all of what their growth expectation is, all of those services we offer to help really make a plan, a roadmap, if for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you say that, because there are the opportunities people don't really realize what the opportunities are. I think
No.
they kind of I think it was something that was poo-pooed for a while, and I think it's hard for, I think, for those people who don't really understand that companies are, gee, I hate to say required to, but they look
They
at ways to meet that 30% set aside. I mean, they really do, and it's part of their kind of their social contract to a certain extent. You know,
Yeah, well,
I
I'll
think,
give you one last example, which I think is pretty much sums it up. So Savoca was fortunate enough just to win a contract with the International Gaming Technology, which is one of the largest global gaming companies based out of
right,
London. Okay, they manage 40 of the 44 lotteries in North America. One of their clients happens to be the state of New York. State of New York. Now they've been managing it for 30 years. 30 years. And now New York says, for us to continue working with you, you need to have diversity. You need to have a diversity component and diversity businesses working to be able to comply with the contract, because New York has a 30% set aside for MWBEs, women and minority business. So Savoca now has won that contract with IGT to provide them with not only our consulting services, but working with them to find and identify viable certified MWBEs to help them meet that 30% spend. So this is interesting because they're a global company. They're based in London. And if any of you that have been to the UK, London is diverse everywhere you look, but they don't. But here in the United States, and specifically in New York, with a champion like our governor, Hochul, she wants to make sure that 30% is met. So we're very fortunate and we're very excited. And I'm excited to be able to bring more partners like NYBB Group and some of our clients to the table.
and look, and we're excited to work together. I mean, you know, believe it or not, as I told Sharon before we started, her and we could go on for hours, you know, because we were so passionate about what we believe in, and also, you know, what we've been doing for a lot of years. You know, it's not our, you know, first, you know, time around the block, so to speak, right? So we've learned the hard way. But I wanted to thank Sharon for being here. Sharon, how can folks contact you so that, you know, if they have questions, even just questions about, you know, how they can comply, because I'm sure our audience has a lot of folks who maybe, you know, think they are a certified woman-owned business and they're not.
Sure. Well, if you go to my website, which is Savoca Enterprises, there is an info at Savoca Enterprises, or you can email me directly, Sharon@SavocaEnterprises.com. I'd be happy to, you know, or reach out to Anthony. As I said, we have a long-term relationship, and, you know, excited about, you know, I've been doing this diversity thing for quite a long time, and I can say this clearly, and I've said it to Anthony in the last few months: the sun, the moon, and the stars are aligned. Not only they are aligned for diverse businesses, but they're aligned for prime businesses, for majority-owned businesses, for us to work together, growing our capacity with collaboration, and at the end game, the M&A piece of this is a value add that never had the value that it has today, and is not going to go away. If anything, it's going to keep increasing those transactions.
Without a doubt, Sharon, I want to thank you for being my guest. I think it was a real informative. I mean, an important part of what's going on in the world. And as the audience knows, you know, we are dedicated to bringing you the most important information, things that can help your business. Obviously, our goal is for those people who are on their way to exiting, or an exit strategy is necessary. We can certainly help them with that. But along the way, there's so much value we want to bring to folks. That's why somebody like Sharon is so important. Some of the other guests that we have that we hope to bring you, and the ones that we have brought you, are folks that add value to your life and to what you do. Because we realize, you know, 80% of most of our small business owners' value is trapped in their business. And we don't want to see that go to waste. And I think I want to thank everyone for viewing, and anyone who needs to reach out, of course, you have my information. You can find me at the NYBBGroup.com, and you can reach out to myself, any one of my partners, any one of our folks, and you'll even see Sharon as one of our affiliates on the site. Thanks again, everyone, for viewing, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.